In a small town where social tensions are palpable, Denzel, a 12-year-old black boy, timidly enters the door of a high-end perfume store. The bell at the entrance rings gently, attracting a few curious glances. Her face instantly lights up at the colorful bottles carefully lined up on the sparkling glass shelves. Each bottle, elegantly presented, seems to contain a mysterious universe, and the child is fascinated by the play of lights on the amber and crystalline liquids. The cozy atmosphere of the store, with its polished parquet floor and soothing background music, contrasts with the hustle and bustle outside. While his father, Marcus Johnson, finishes an urgent call on the sidewalk, Denzel decides to pass the time by exploring the area. His fingers hesitate to touch a bottle adorned with a golden cap, but he restrains himself, contenting himself with bringing his nose closer to smell the scents floating in the air. Every step he takes is imbued with an innocent curiosity, that of a child discovering a world that seems inaccessible to him. What he doesn't know is that a look of suspicion has followed him since the moment he walked through the door. Pierre Masson, the store security guard, did not take his eyes off him. Tall, robust, and always dressed in an impeccable black uniform, Pierre displays a contemptuous air, his furrowed eyebrows betraying immediate judgment. He is known in the neighborhood for his rigid, even aggressive, attitudes towards certain customers, especially those he considers inappropriate to frequent such a prestigious place. When Denzel reaches out to take a closer look at a particularly sparkling bottle, a bottle with faceted glass that reflects lights like a kaleidoscope, he is suddenly interrupted by a towering shadow. Pierre rushes towards him, his face closed and his features hardened by an expression of contempt. In an instant, he stands in front of the boy, cutting off any retreat, his imposing stature accentuating the tension in the air. "What are you doing there?" Pierre thunders in a hoarse voice. "Don't touch that." Denzel, surprised, takes a step back, his eyes wide. "Sir, I just wanted to look," he stammers, feeling a lump forming in his throat. But Pierre, as if deaf to any explanation, advances further, invading the boy's personal space. He points at the bottle, then at Denzel, accusing him abruptly. "Don't act innocent. I'm sure you stole something. Show me your pockets." Heart pounding, Denzel tries to defend himself, his hands shaking as he empties the pockets of his jeans in front of the security guard. "I didn't take anything, I swear," he whispers, his voice barely audible. But Pierre doesn't want to hear anything. His suspicions have already turned into certainty. He narrows his eyes and, in an icy voice, adds, "If you didn't steal anything, prove it. Drink a little of this perfume so that I can be sure that it is not hidden in your mouth." The absurdity and violence of the request leaves Denzel speechless. Around them, the customers and store employees cease their activities, forming a sort of implicit circle. Some exchange shocked looks. Others lower their eyes, preferring not to get involved in the incident. A woman discreetly takes out her phone to film, hesitating between indignation and fear of intervening. Denzel feels tears coming, but he refuses to cry. His hands become clammy as he awkwardly grabs the bottle. I'm going to do it," he whispers, hoping that this will be enough to end the humiliation. He unscrews the golden cap with difficulty, the glistening liquid threatening to overflow. His eyes desperately search for an ally among the spectators, but he only finds shifty glances or phones pointed at him. Under Pierre's relentless pressure, he brings the bottle to his lips and takes a sip, his face instantly contorting under the effect of the acrid, burning taste. A murmur of horror runs through the audience. A woman puts a hand to her mouth, while a store employee seems about to intervene, but remains frozen, torn between the desire to protest and the fear of reprisals. Pierre, however, remains impassive, arms crossed, watching over the boy like a triumphant jailer. Denzel, his throat burning, coughs violently, his eyes full of tears. He places the bottle on the counter, his hands shaking so hard he almost spills it. "You see, I didn't steal anything," he manages to articulate between two hiccups. Moments later, the store door opens, letting in Marcus Johnson, imposing in his impeccably tailored dark suit. A decorated military veteran and now an FBI agent, Marcus is used to handling tense situations, but nothing prepared him for what he discovered when he crossed the threshold. His gaze stops on Denzel, standing near a counter, his shoulders slumped and his face pale, a bottle of perfume in his hand. The child, visibly shaken, has eyes shining with unshed tears. A few steps away, security guard Pierre is still shouting, his authoritarian tone echoing in the heavy silence of the store. Marcus walks slowly, each step echoing on the shiny wooden floor. His cold, calculating gaze scans the scene, analyzing every detail. As he approaches Denzel, he places a firm but reassuring hand on his son's shoulder, a gesture that sends a shudder through the silence in the store. "What is going on here?" Marcus asks in a calm but icy voice, a voice that, although not raised, immediately demands everyone's attention. Pierre, unaware of who he is dealing with, turns to him with a mixture of condescension and assurance. He points at Denzel, his posture still dominant. "This boy was stealing. I asked him to prove his innocence," he declares sharply, as if he had acted like a hero. The words echo in the air, but Marcus doesn't react immediately. Instead, he straightens his shoulders slightly, revealing all the quiet strength he embodies. Her eyes pierce Pierre, almost reducing him to nothing by the sheer intensity of her gaze. "Prove his innocence?" Marcus repeats, each word weighing like a threat. "By drinking perfume?" A look of surprise crosses Pierre's face, but he tries to hold it together. "It was to make sure he wasn't hiding anything," he begins, but his voice loses confidence as he speaks. Marcus cuts his justifications short, his tone still controlled, but charged with indisputable authority. "Do you know who you're talking to? I'm Special Agent Marcus Johnson, and this boy is my son. What you just did is not only immoral, it is illegal." The revelation hits Pierre like a punch. He turns pale, his shoulders slumping slightly as he begins to understand the gravity of the situation. Around them, customers and employees, until then silent, murmur among themselves, shocked by what they have just learned. Some step back, others discreetly take out their phone to capture this moment when the balance of power has just shifted. Marcus, implacable, leans forward slightly, further reducing the distance between him and Pierre. "You humiliated an innocent child, my son, in front of an audience. You forced him to ingest a toxic substance, putting his health at risk. You don't yet know what trouble you've gotten yourself into." Denzel, still in shock, looks up at his father, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. Marcus gives him a comforting look before turning to one of the employees, who is standing frozen behind the counter. "Call your manager immediately," he orders. "And bring me a first aid kit for my son." The tension in the store is palpable. Pierre, once confident, takes a step back, his lips trembling as he tries to stammer out a response. I didn't know." But Marcus leaves him no escape. "Ignorance or not, your actions will have consequences. I will ensure that your behavior is investigated in court and that you are held accountable for your actions." A man in a suit, obviously the store manager, then rushes into the room, alerted by the chaos. "Sir, I am the director. What is going on here?" he asks, his hesitant tone betraying his concern. Marcus stands up, pointing at Pierre. "What is happening is that your security guard committed a racist attack on my son. You will immediately take action against him. Otherwise, I will hold you responsible as well." The director, pale, nods quickly, his gaze passing from Pierre to Marcus, realizing that he is dealing with much more than a simple customer. At this moment, Pierre seems tiny, crushed by the weight of his actions and the certainty that this day will mark a turning point in his life. Pierre, now fired from his job, finds himself facing a whirlwind of consequences. Marcus Johnson's lawsuits, combined with media coverage of the incident, call attention to the store's discriminatory practices and the security guard's personal behavior. Isolated and without support, Pierre begins to understand the extent of his actions, but it is too late to repair the damage caused. The outlet, under increasing public pressure, issued a public apology statement, acknowledging not only the mistakes made, but also the emotional and psychological impact inflicted on Denzel, and his family. In an effort to regain the trust of the community, management is committed to implementing mandatory training on anti-discrimination and diversity for all its employees. Specialized consultants are hired to review their internal policies, and part of the store's profits are donated to local associations working for equality and social justice. Denzel, on the other hand, receives immense support from his family, friends, and community. Messages of solidarity are pouring in, some from strangers touched by the story, others from national organizations fighting against racial prejudice. His family carefully ensures that he can talk about his experience and express his emotions, allowing him to begin to rebuild himself after this ordeal. Over time, he gradually regains his self-confidence, encouraged by the idea that his story has made it possible to make things happen. The incident becomes a topic of debate in the small town, often avoided by discussions of issues of race and social injustice. Community workshops are held, where residents come together to talk about their experiences, confront their prejudices, and look for ways to build a more inclusive community. Local schools are including educational programs to educate young people about diversity and equity, hoping to prevent such incidents from happening in the future. What could have been a simple anecdote of injustice hushed in silence becomes the catalyst for a local movement of awareness. The residents, touched by Denzel's courage and Marcus' firmness, realize that change begins with small gestures and individual positions. The incident also received national coverage, attracting the attention of media and activists. This inspires other communities to examine their own practices and demand accountability. For Denzel, this experience leaves a scar, but also a valuable lesson. He learns that even in adversity, courage and the support of his people can transform pain into a force for good. At just 12 years old, he becomes a symbol of hope for those facing injustice, proving that even the youngest voices can spark lasting change.